The International Maritime Organization, known as the Inter-Governmental Maritime Consultative Organization until 1982, is a specialized agency of the United Nations responsible for regulating shipping. The IMO was established in Geneva in 1948 and came into force 10 years later, meeting for the first time in 1959. Headquartered in London, United Kingdom, the IMO has 171 member states and 3 associate members. The IMO's primary purpose is to develop and maintain a comprehensive regulatory framework for shipping, and its remit today includes safety, environmental concerns, legal matters, technical cooperation, maritime security and the efficiency of shipping. IMO is governed by an assembly of members and is financially administered by a council of members elected from the assembly. The work of IMO is conducted through 5 committees, and these are supported by technical subcommittees. Member organizations of the UN organizational family may observe the proceedings of the IMO. Observer status is granted to qualified non-governmental organizations. IMO is supported by a permanent secretariat of employees who are representative of the organization's members. The secretariat is composed of a secretary-general who is periodically elected by the Assembly, and various divisions such as those for marine safety, environmental protection and a conference section. History. SOLAS Intergovernmental Maritime Consultative Organization was formed to fulfill a desire to bring the regulation of the safety of shipping into an international framework, for which the creation of the United Nations provided an opportunity. Hitherto such international conventions had been initiated piecemeal, notably the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, first adopted in 1914 following the Titanic disaster. IMCO's first task was to update that convention. The resulting 1960 convention was subsequently recast and updated in 1974, and it is the convention that has been subsequently modified and updated to adapt to changes in safety requirements and technology. When IMCO began its operations in 1958, certain other pre-existing instruments were brought under its aegis, most notable the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution of the Sea by Oil 1954. Throughout its existence, IMCO, renamed the IMO in 1982, has continued to produce new and updated instruments across a wide range of maritime issues covering not only safety of life and marine pollution, but also encompassing safe navigation, search and rescue, wreck removal, tonnage measurement, liability and compensation, ship recycling, the training and certification of seafarers, and piracy. More recently, SOLAS has been amended to bring an increased focus on maritime security through the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. The IMO has also increased its focus on air emissions from ships. In January 1959, IMO began to maintain and promote the 1954 OILPOL Convention. Under the guidance of IMO, the convention was amended in 1962, 1969, and 1971. Torrey Canyon. As oil trade and industry developed, many people in the industry began to recognize a need for further improvements in regards to oil pollution prevention at sea. This became increasingly apparent in 1967, when the tanker Torrey Canyon spilled 120,000 tons of crude oil when it ran aground entering the English Channel. The Torrey Canyon grounding was the largest oil pollution incident recorded up to the time. Among other things, the accident forced the maritime industry and public to question the efficacy of standing regulations and preventative measures pertaining to oil pollution at sea. This incident prompted a series of new conventions. International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution by Ships 73/78 IMO held an emergency session of its council to deal with the need to readdress regulations pertaining to maritime pollution. In 1969, the IMO Assembly decided to host an international gathering in 1973 dedicated to this issue. The goal at hand was to develop an international agreement for controlling general environmental contamination by ships when out at sea. During the next few years, IMO brought to the forefront a series of measures designed to prevent large ship accidents and to minimize their effects. It also detailed how to deal with the environmental threat caused by routine ship duties such as the cleaning of oil cargo tanks or the disposal of engine room wastes. Interestingly enough, in terms of tonnage, the aforementioned was a bigger problem than accidental pollution. The most significant thing to come out of this conference was the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, 1973. It covers not only accidental and operational oil pollution but also different types of pollution by chemicals, goods in packaged form, sewage, garbage and air pollution. The original MARPOL was signed on the 17th of February 1973, but did not come into force due to lack of ratifications. The current convention is a combination of 1973 convention and the 1978 protocol. It entered into force on the 2nd of October 1983. As of May 2013, 152 states, representing 99.2% of the world's shipping tonnage, are involved in the convention. In 1983, the IMO established the World Maritime University in Malmö, Sweden. Membership. To become a member of the IMO, a state ratifies a multilateral treaty known as the Convention on the International Maritime Organization. As of 2015, there are 171 member states of the IMO, which includes 170 of the UN members and the Cook Islands. The first state to ratify the convention was the United Kingdom in 1949. The most recent member to join was Zambia, which became an IMO member in 2014. The three associate members of the IMO are the Faroe Islands, Hong Kong and Macau. Most UN member states that are not members of IMO are landlocked countries. These include Afghanistan, Andorra, Armenia, Belarus, Bhutan, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Central African Republic, Chad, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Lesotho, Liechtenstein, Mali, Niger, Rwanda, South Sudan, Swaziland, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. However, the Federated States of Micronesia and Nauru, which are island nations in the Pacific Ocean, are non-members. Structure. The organization consists of an assembly, a council and 5 main committees: the Maritime Safety Committee, the Marine Environment Protection Committee, the Legal Committee, the Technical Cooperation Committee and the Facilitation Committee. A number of subcommittees support the work of the main technical committees. Legal instruments. IMO is the source of approximately 60 legal instruments that guide the regulatory development of its member states to improve safety at sea, facilitate trade among seafaring states and protect the maritime environment. The most well-known is the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, as well as International Convention on Oil Pollution Preparedness, Response and Cooperation. Others include the International Oil Pollution Compensation Funds. It also functions as a depository of yet-to-be ratified treaties, such as the International Convention on Liability and Compensation for Damage in connection with the carriage of hazardous and noxious substances by sea. 1996 and Nairobi International Convention of Removal of Wrecks. IMO regularly enacts regulations, which are broadly enforced by national and local maritime authorities in member countries, such as the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea. The IMO has also enacted a Port State Control Authority, allowing domestic maritime authorities such as Coast Guards to inspect foreign flag ships calling at ports of the many port states. Memoranda of understanding were signed by some countries unifying port state control procedures among the signatories. Current issues. Recent initiatives at the IMO have included amendments to SOLAS, which upgraded fire protection standards on passenger ships, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, which establishes basic requirements on training, certification and watchkeeping for seafarers, and to the Convention on the Prevention of Maritime Pollution, which required double hulls on all tankers. In December 2002, new amendments to the 1974 SOLAS Convention were enacted. These amendments gave rise to the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code, which went into effect on 1 July 2004. The concept of the code is to provide layered and redundant defenses against smuggling, terrorism, piracy, stowaways, etc. The ISPS code required most ships and port facilities engaged in international trade to establish and maintain strict security procedures as specified in ship and port-specific ship security plans and port facility security plans. The IMO has a role in tackling international climate change. The first intersessional meeting of IMO's Working Group on Greenhouse Gas Emissions from Ships took place in Oslo, Norway, tasked with developing the technical basis for the reduction mechanisms that may form part of a future IMO regime to control greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping, and a draft of the actual reduction mechanisms themselves for further consideration by IMO's Marine Environment Protection Committee. The IMO participated in the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris, seeking to establish itself as the appropriate international body to address greenhouse gas emissions from ships engaged in international trade. Nonetheless, there has been widespread criticism of the IMO's relative inaction since the conclusion of the Paris Conference, with the initial data-gathering step of a three-stage process to reduce maritime greenhouse emissions expected to last until 2020. The IMO is also responsible for publishing the International Code of Signals for use between merchant and naval vessels. IMO has harmonized information available to seafarers and shoreside traffic services called e-navigation, and e-navigation strategy was ratified in 2005, and an implementation plan was developed through 3 IMO subcommittees. The plan was completed by 2014 and implemented in November of that year. IMO has also served as a key partner and enabler of U.S. international and interagency efforts to establish maritime domain awareness. Governance of IMO. The governing body of the International Maritime Organization is the Assembly, which meets every 2 years. In between Assembly sessions, a council, consisting of 40 member states elected by the Assembly, acts as the governing body. The technical work of the International Maritime Organization is carried out by a series of committees. The Secretariat consists of some 300 international civil servants headed by a Secretary-General. Secretary-General. The current Secretary-General is Kitak Lim, elected for a 4-year term at the 106th session of the IMO Council in June 2015 and at the 27th session of the IMO's Assembly in November 2015. His mandate started on 1 January 2016. Previous Secretaries-General: 1959 Ove Nielsen, 1961 William Graham, 1963 Jean Roulier, 1968 Colin Goad, 1974 Chandrika Prasad Srivastava, 1990 William O'Neill, 2003 Efthymios Mitropoulos, 2011 Koji Sekimizu. Technical Committees. The technical work of the International Maritime Organization is carried out by a series of committees. This includes the Maritime Safety Committee, the Marine Environment Protection Committee, the Legal Committee, the Technical Cooperation Committee for capacity building, the Facilitation Committee to simplify the documentation and formalities required in international shipping. Maritime Safety Committee. It is regulated in the Article 28 of the Convention on the IMO. The Maritime Safety Committee shall consider any matter within the scope of the organization concerned with aids to navigation, construction and equipment of vessels, manning from a safety standpoint, rules for the prevention of collisions, handling of dangerous cargoes, maritime safety procedures and requirements, hydrographic information, logbooks and navigational records, marine casualty investigation, salvage and rescue, and any other matters directly affecting maritime safety. The Maritime Safety Committee shall provide machinery for performing any duties assigned to it by this convention, the Assembly of the Council, or any duty within the scope of this article which may be assigned to it by or under any other international instrument and accepted by the organization. Having regard to the provisions of Article 25, the Maritime Safety Committee, upon request by the Assembly of the Council or, if it deems such action useful in the interests of its own work, shall maintain such close relationship with other bodies as may further the purposes of the organization. The Maritime Safety Committee is the most senior of these and is the main technical committee. It oversees the work of its 9 subcommittees and initiates new topics. One broad topic it deals with is the effect of the human element on casualties. This work has been put to all of the subcommittees, but meanwhile, the Maritime Safety Committee has developed a code for the management of ships which will ensure that agreed operational procedures are in place and followed by the ship and shoreside staff. Subcommittees. The MSC and MEPC are assisted in the work by a number of subcommittees which are open to all member states. Subcommittee on Human Element Training and Watchkeeping. Subcommittee on Implementation of IMO Instruments. Subcommittee on Navigation, Communications and Search and Rescue. Subcommittee on Pollution Prevention and Response. Subcommittee on Ship Design and Construction. Subcommittee on Ship Systems and Equipment. Subcommittee on Carriage of Cargoes and Containers. Until 2013 there were 9 subcommittees as follows: bulk liquids and gases, carriage of dangerous goods, solid cargoes and containers, fire protection, radio communications and search and rescue, safety of navigation, ship design and equipment, stability and load lines and fishing vessels safety, standards of training and watchkeeping, flag state implementation, resolutions. Resolution MSC 255 of 16 May 2008 adopts the Code of the International Standards and Recommended Practices for a Safety Investigation into a Marine Casualty, a Marine Incident. It is also known as the Casualty Investigation Code.